at the current site of the Meadowbrook Golf Course in Gettysburg. In 1863, this was a farm owned by a man named Michael Fiscel. And of course, the Fiscel farm was the 5th Corps Field Hospital on July 3rd, 1863. Nothing exists of the Michael Fiscel farmhouse, barn, and field hospital. It's all been destroyed. Just the land here is still here, but even that is altered by the present day golf course. The house here was built around the turn of the century and is used as a clubhouse for the Meadowbrook Golf Club today. Now, the 5th Corps Field Hospital on the night of July 2nd was down near the Weichert Farm on Hospital Road, Little Round Top being in the distance over here. And on the night of the 2nd, the field hospital was moved here to the Michael Fiscel farm, where John Milhow, Surgeon John Milhow, and Surgeon Edward Shippen were the lead surgeons here at the hospital. On this field hospital, there were well over 1,400 men at any one time, and as high as 3,800. Now, originally, the barn sat from where the shed is right over here to where the rock pile is. And of course, the barn was torn down about 20 years ago because it was in dilapidated condition. These rocks are actually pieces of the foundation from the old Michael Fiscel barn. So this is all that remains of the Michael Fiscel barn, is this pile of rocks here, which was one of the foundations. And of course, when they built this little fountain over here, they also used some of the stones for that as well. Now, the Michael Fiscel house itself stood right here where the 18 hole is today. The 18th hole of the golf course stands, the green of the 18th hole of this golf course stands here where the old Michael Fiscel house was. Now, those who were wounded in the 5th Corps, predominantly on July 2nd, 1863, in this direction behind us, or in front of our camera rather, here, where the round tops are, again, were brought to the Weichert farm, and then on the night of the 2nd, brought here to the Michael Fiscel farm, and put into the barn here of the Michael Fiscel household. And these wounded men had plenty of amputations and deaths that were happening here on the Michael Fiscel farm. There was a great deal of suffering going on in this barn here. And those who did die were actually brought east in a field out here near the tree line. There's a stream, and they were temporarily buried in a cemetery, not a permanent cemetery, but just a temporary cemetery. They were buried there in that open meadow just before the stream over here, until, of course, their bodies were either taken home or taken to the National Cemetery in Gettysburg, just a few miles away from here. But again, nothing remains any longer of the Michael Fiscel farm. The 18 hole of the Meadowbrook Golf Course is the site of the house, and of course the rock pile here in the distance, the barn, about a 100-foot long barn, sat there at one time as well. Of course, the ground itself, the field hospital itself, was greatly altered by the building of the Meadowbrook Golf Course, and this is just another sad case of history that has been lost to development. The current owner that owns the Meadowbrook Golf Course, I talked to him today, and he said that about 25 years ago, the National Park Service came here and asked him to restore the barn. And he said that he would restore the barn, but he would need about $100,000 to do so. The National Park Service did not and was interested in coming up with the funds to restore the Michael Fiscel farm, and he said that the floor had caved in, to the bottom floor, and it was so dilapidated that the decision was made to raise the barn and tear it down. There has been some publications that the barn was torn down to build a clubhouse, and I believe that was also mentioned in Strange and Blighted Land. However, that is not true. The clubhouse was not built with any materials from the barn whatsoever. In fact, the wood itself was sold to a historian and carted away, and the foundation stones from the barn were are right here in front of us. They were used to make this fountain and a few other steps around here on the golf course, and this pile of rocks is the only other thing left from the barn. So sometimes what you read in books or hear isn't necessarily the truth. There was an offer made to salvage. It was just that the Park Service did not take the offer of about $100,000 to do so. So the barn was torn down. This has been the Michael Fiscel Farm, Part 1, on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Fiscel Farm, Part 2 here on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. As I was speaking with the property owners here, they told me that this is the only tree that they know of that was here during the field hospital days of the Michael Fiscel Farm. And this tree is huge. It's probably 200 years old. It does look quite rotted out, but it's probably the only living witness to the suffering here at the Fiscel Farm. Our first video was shot right over here. You can see the flag of the 18th hole of the golf course, and then the rubble here pile from the Michael Fiscel Farm. And the owners were actually kind enough to give me one of the foundation stones for the Michael Fiscel barn as a souvenir as well, so that was kind of nice. But this tree here is probably the only witness tree on the property here from the Michael Fiscel Farm. Big and Little Round Top sit just over here, just above this ridge. And again, soldiers from the 5th Corps wounded on July 2nd, 1863, were taken to the Weichert Farm and then brought over here to the Michael Fiscel Farm and placed here in the barn, which sat where that rock pile is there, and it was alongside the house. And those that were that died were taken a little further to the east and buried in a temporary cemetery over there. So this has been the Michael Fiscel Farm, Part 2, the witness tree here at the Michael Fiscel Farm on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Of the Michael Fiscel Farm, and we're standing here at the hospital marker here on Golden Road, where the Michael Fiscel Farm, and I'm going to read from it. It says, the Division Field Hospital of 5th Corps were established July 2nd at the Weichert House and other houses near Little Round Top and along the Town Road. During the night, they were removed across the Rock Creek and located as follows. 1st Division, south of White Run. 2nd Division, 100 rods south of White Run near the Clap Saddle House. 3rd Division, 1/2 mile west of 2 taverns near the Pike. These hospitals cared for 1,400 wounded and remained in operation until August 2nd, 1863. The Medical Director of the 5th Corps, Surgeon John J. Milhow, U.S. Army, 1st Division, Surgeon Edward Shippen, U.S. Volunteer, 2nd Division, Assistant Surgeon Clinton Wagner, U.S. Army, 3rd Division, Surgeon Lewis W. Reed, U.S. Volunteers, Medical Officer in charge of the Corps Hospital, Surgeon A.M. Clark, U.S. Volunteers. And again, I want to mention, it says that the 1st Division of the 5th Corps Field Hospital was south of White Run on the Fiscel Farm, and that is right here today where Meadowbrook Golf Course is. You can see the golfers here at the 10 hole. And again, in the distance behind those golfers is actually the witness tree, and then beyond that is where the 18th hole is, the Michael Fiscel house and barn once stood. This has been the 5th Corps Field Hospital, the Michael Fiscel Farm, Part 3, on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. It's a belt plate that was found on the Michael Fiscel Farm while plowing the fields in the early 1920s. This is one of the artifacts that was found here, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to have the opportunity to hold it in my hand. This is the Michael Fiscel Farm, Part 4. Here, the Rock Creek. And this was the site. This is going to be the Michael Fiscel Farm, Part 5, our final part. And this was the site of the tented hospital. Now, the Michael Fiscel Farm sat just over this ridge here, the barn and the house to the next of it. So we shot our first video from where the old site of the barn and the house was. Then the second video was shot just a little behind it with a witness tree. The third video was shot along Golden Road where the marker, the field hospital marker was. And then my fourth video, which was very short, that was the video of the U.S. belt plate that was found. That was actually shot at this house up at the top of the hill, which is owned by the family named Golden, who sold the property to the current owners. And it was in their family from around 1929 to 1992. And Mrs. Golden was the one that was kind enough to share with me and now with everybody here on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook the U.S. belt plate. This is something that is exclusive to our friends and members. Probably never get a chance to see it. Also, she was kind enough to share with me, add to my personal collection, and now I'm going to share it with all of you, photographs near the end of the life of the barn. Now, the house itself was torn down around 1917. The house that sat where the 18th hole is today. Now, when the soldiers were brought to the Michael Fiscel Farm, the tented field hospital triage area was all out here right along the side of the creek. This makes sense because it was in a meadow. It was close to a water source. As severe operations were needed, amputations, and so those men were moved up toward the household in the barn. Now, she shared and actually gave me duplicate copies of photographs of the Michael Fiscel barn. In February of 1992, there was a large 2.5-foot snowstorm that hit Pennsylvania, and that's what collapsed the barn. And then they sold the property in August of 1993. And here's some of the photographs I put along the Rock Creek Bridge here. This is as the barn is being torn down here. This is the picture of the collapsed roof in June of 1993. This next picture here is also a portion of the collapsed roof. And then this is the barn in 1990 before the collapsing. There's another photograph here. And again, you can see the dilapidated condition of the barn as it was near the end of its life. And again, here's another picture of the collapse. And some of these photographs you can actually see. These were in March, I believe, she told me, and this was as that huge snowstorm in February began to melt away. That was the remnants of the last snow, which finally would destroy the barn. And of course, later in the summer, the barn was torn down. And they also backed the current owner's story that there was a possibility that barn being saved if the National Park Service could have come forth with funds or had an organization such as the Civil War Preservation Trust come up with funds, but instead it would have cost about $100,000, according to the current owner, to restore it. No one came up with the funds, and that site was lost forever. The only thing left on the Michael Fiscel Farm, of course, as we talked about in earlier videos, is the stones from the foundation of the barn, which you can see here in this photograph here. And then, of course, the still living witness tree is really the only thing still alive left here from the Michael Fiscel Farm. This has been an exclusive Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook Secret to the Battlefield Field Hospital video. The 5th Corps Field Hospital, the Michael Fiscel Farm, Part 5 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook.